everyone, welcome back to my channel. I thought you wouldn't be making it back here. Today is going to be a very exciting episode. I'm going to be making a chocolate babka, and I've never done it before. I will be featuring one of my favorite recipes to use. It's so versatile when it comes to being used as a bread dough. It's going to be Claire's enriched dough recipe. Claire Saffitz is one of my favorite chefs to watch and follow. She just explains things very thoroughly. Basically, she gave me a lot of my know-hows when it comes to bread baking. And so I am so excited. We're gonna have some fun. So I will be using Claire's enriched dough recipe for a lot of reasons. I have used it before I've made jalapeno cheddar bread before with that recipe. I've also made just the regular hamburger buns that she featured on NYT Cooking. There was also the bread loaf where it was just absolute perfection when it comes to the butteriness and being able to absorb a lot of the moisture from all the liquids or all the fats that are included in the recipe. And so today, I just want to test out how versatile it is. I've never made a chocolate babka, so it's going to be very exciting. I'm going to see if it's going to be a kitchen win or a flop. All of the measurements are going to be in the description box below. She explains a lot of like the technical know-hows and just what makes the method like more preferable. But today, I will be following the recipe except for changing a few methods here and there. So what I have here is a cup of milk, 4 eggs, 3 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour plus 6 tablespoons. I have a mixture of 1/4 cup of sugar with 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. I will be doing a teeny bit of modification with her recipe just because I wanted to try something out. So I will be putting the 1 cup of milk in a pan, and I will be heating this up. For those who have never seen the NYT cooking video of Claire's enriched dough recipe, what I'm doing currently with the milk while it's heating up right there is that I am doing a process called tangjong, which is basically a mixture of milk and a little bit of the flour. It creates, basically the flour goes through like a gelatinization process. And so it helps the bread retain its moisture. And in effect, that creates a very pillowy, soft dough that you see in like brioche bread. And part of the reason why I also want this recipe is the fact that it uses all of the fats. It uses milk. I'm using whole milk. It uses eggs. It uses oil, and it also uses butter. And so I just love to have that kind of effect when it comes to the chocolate babka. I've tried store-bought babka before. It has a little bit of elasticity to it. However, the one thing that I did not like about a store-bought chocolate babka was the ratio between the bread or the dough and the chocolate filling. So right now you don't want it to boil. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1/3 cup of the milk, and then I'm going to put it in the bowl and leave the 2/3 cup in on the stove. And to that, what I'm going to do is, while the mixture is still hot, I'm going to measure out 1/4 cup of the flour from this measurement right here, from the overall portion of the flour, I should say. From off the heat, you want to pour it in. And you just want to mix it before putting it back on the stove to make the roux. At this time, I have the heat off. You want to keep whisking for this and make sure that there are no big clumps of flour left over. You want to make sure that it's all mixed together. And this is going to gelatinize very quickly. How you know it's done is that if you see that it's the texture of mashed potatoes. All right, let me show you how it looks like. As you can see, it is almost the consistency of mashed potatoes. I'm gonna pour it into the bowl, mix it with the remainder of the milk, and add my eggs. One of the things why I love Claire's recipe is that these are cold eggs. They are straight from the fridge. This particular one does not really require me to have anything room temp. Her thought process when it comes to adding ingredients all together, it makes it more doable in a sense that I don't have to wait 30 minutes or an hour or so to have a butter at room temp or a milk at room temp. Once this is cooled, we're gonna add the eggs, and we're also gonna add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I choose olive oil because it's a little bit more fruity. I think for me it's just for flavor. I've stuck with this particular recipe probably because I'm already familiar with it. I've used it for jalapeno cheddar bread before. I've used it for cinnamon rolls. I wanted to check out to see if I can, in a way, use it in another recipe. That's part of the excitement. Like I said, nothing here is going to be original, although obviously this particular method that I'm doing is not from her original enriched dough recipe. But if you're an avid Claire Saffitz fan, you would recognize that this is her method when it comes to the cinnamon roll recipe. I want to make sure that there are no eggshells. Alrighty, so 4 eggs, here we go. I just want to break up the yolks and make sure that it's all mixed. Usually the dough hook doesn't really do its job. And to that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of the olive oil. One of the things that she explained in her video was activating the yeast. It's something that a lot of bakers do when it comes to adding yeast to a mixture. It's to see if the yeast is alive. Like how she explained it, unless you are not confident with the batch that you bought, you can definitely just skip that part of waiting 5 to 10 minutes for any active bubbling. I just give it a little bit of swirl. So if she skips it, I'm skipping it. And to that, I'm also going to add the rest of the dough. Right, I'm going to show you how it looks at this time. The dough looks quite shaggy. It is very imperfect. However, everything is mixed together. And as you can see, I haven't added my salt and my sugar yet. Salt and sugar are gluten inhibitors, and you want the gluten to develop. The gluten is what gives it that elasticity. I'm just giving this a little bit of scrape, making sure that none of the flour, there's no flour bits left down there, and making sure that it's all incorporated. And then I'm going to slowly sprinkle in the salt and the sugar. So before I actually add the salt and the sugar, I want to give this dough a little bit of a rest, just so it gives it a little bit of time to all of the flour to just hydrate. So at this time, while the dough is resting, I am preparing my filling for the chocolate babka. I have one half cup of heavy cream over here, 8 ounces of really good dark chocolate. And if you can't find dark chocolate, or if you don't like the taste of dark chocolate, you can also use semi-sweet chocolate chips. I have half a cup of butter that's cubed, and 3/4 of a cup of sugar or powdered sugar that I have combined with 1/3 of a cup of good cocoa powder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be melting the butter in the heavy cream in a saucepan. All right, so the dough has done its rest. I'll put this aside. What I'm going to do is I am gonna slowly drizzle in or sprinkle in the salt and the sugar. And honestly, my life would have been so much easier if I just removed this bowl, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna increase the speed. So while this mixes, my mixture is still waiting for the butter to be overall completely melted. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in the 8 ounces of dark chocolate, and I'm gonna whisk it in, making sure that it's completely incorporated. And then I'm gonna be adding this powdered sugar and cocoa powder mixture. So part of the reason why I'm already doing this now is I already have a dough that has been doing its fermentation for about 24 hours now. The reason why I wanted to do this now is that we needed to make this a little bit cooler um, when we put it on the dough. This time I am using Preppy Kitchen's recipe for the filling, as well as for the glaze, the syrup glaze that will go on top of the babka, which I will be linking in the description below. So the butter has completely melted. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add my chocolate, and I wanted to make sure that it is fully, the chocolate has fully melted before I turn off the heat. I'll take it off the stove. Ah, kidding. It's not that hot, but just to make sure that there's no clumps of cocoa powder or powdered sugar in this thing. I have this pan, which will help me make sure that it will cool down evenly all throughout, make the process a little bit faster. So this is going to go in the fridge to cool down for an hour before we actually put it on the dough. Okay. At this time, the dough definitely needs a lot of work still. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to scrape it, give it one good scrape. At this time, the dough is tacky, but it's not overall extremely sticky. As you can see, that still needs a lot of work from the shaggy part where without the salt and the sugar, it now looks a lot smoother. I'm gonna keep going for, I would say, about 12-15 minutes. And then I will be adding the butter next. Okay. So this has been going on for, I would say, about 20 minutes. Again, one of the things why I don't like, I prefer results based, or like describing how it looks versus giving a time frame, is because of things like this. As you can see, the dough itself is being pulled down. It means that it has formed some sort of elasticity. That's actually what I wanted to achieve at this stage. So at this point, this is a good indication that I can start adding the butter. And then I'm just going to add half of the stick until it's fully incorporated in the dough, and then I'm going to proceed to add the other half. You don't want to add the butter when it's room temp. In this case, it was getting to that point. The butter was a tad bit cold, just a smidge, but it was to the point where, as you can see, like if you can see it, my hands are a little bit glossy because it was starting to melt. So while the dough continues to knead, what I did is I prepared my loaf pans. I double buttered it up. What that means is that I buttered the pan, but I also put parchment paper and then buttered the parchment paper as well, just to prevent the sticking from happening, just because we are incorporating some sugar in the loaf, and I just wanted to make sure that it's easy for me to just lift it up out of the pan once it's done. But it looks like my dough is ready. So let's do the window pane test to see if the dough has kneaded enough. Yep. No tear. Let's see how far I can stretch it up. This is perfect. I'm just going to do like a final knead on the board. Leave it to rest at room temp for 30 minutes and put it in the fridge to do its fermentation. Like I said, if you put it in the fridge, it allows it to do not a fast fermentation. It helps slows it down, but it achieves a much more flavorful and just overall great quality of the bread. The dough is very smooth, doesn't stick to my hand. The elasticity is just great. I think one of the joys of baking is that I get to have Remy punch the dough down, or have a little bit of mommy and me time and have her experience sensory stuff when it comes to baking. So fluffy. So I've also oiled the top of this. Gently place it here. And I'm going to cover it and leave it to rest for about 30 minutes and then pop it in the fridge. As you can see, they look very messy. At this point, I was using Preppy Kitchen's instructions from here on out. I am unsure where I fell through the cracks when it comes to shaping. 12 by 16. Well, I have already taken an L with the length. 12 by 16, however, I have cut it on the side with the longer side. So basically I cut it in half where it's much longer rather than on the shorter side. And so that's why I struggled a lot with shaping the babkas. But good thing is I have a spare that I can try again tomorrow and see how that would turn out. But for now, I will be using baking these, letting it proof first for an hour to an hour and a half, and then bake it at 350.
My second batch of dough proofed overnight for 13 hours in the fridge, and I'm punching the dough down to knock out some of the gases before I cut it in half. I put the other half of the dough that I'm not working on in the fridge to prevent the heat in the room from making the dough rise. With the one I'm currently working on, it helps to start pre-shaping the dough into a rectangle by tugging the corners before rolling it out. I'm rolling the dough out to a 12 by 16 rectangle here. It's important to note that as you roll out the dough, you are not pressing down and out. We're not looking for perfection here, but make sure that we get as little uneven thickness in the dough as possible. In here, I made the mistake of having the dough with the longest side closest to me, but be sure to roll it out with the short side closest to you. A little tip, it's always handy to have a ruler, or in my case a tape measure, just to have even measurements of the loaves. Not sure if this is necessary, but I also trimmed the edges just a little bit. One thing that Preppy Kitchen has in his recipe is that when you make the filling, only put it in the fridge for an hour. I left mine in the fridge for more than a couple of hours, and it was a challenge for me to spread it easily. Both the butter and the chocolate solidified, but I was lucky that the temp in the room helped melt it as I spread the filling. I scooped some filling and put it on different parts of the dough, leaving some borders unfilled on all sides. When you start rolling the dough into a log, you want to make sure that you are tugging the dough ever so gently to you. And we're not lengthening the dough here, so make sure that with each roll, you're not pulling the dough to the sides. What I'm doing with each roll is making sure that there are no empty pockets and the dough is as even as possible. Once you reach the end, just pinch the seam to seal all that goodness. Use a sharp knife or a pizza cutter to cut the dough in half and position each half with the cut side facing up. Put the other cut on top of the other half, forming almost like an X. Twist the top half together and tuck the end. And again, twist the bottom half together and tuck. I had a tough time placing the loaf in the pan, so good luck trying to gently place it in the prepared loaf pan. Cover the dough for their second proofing, which would proof for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. This is from the first batch of loaves that I made last night. The dough to filling ratio was what I was expecting. The dough was soft and pillowy, and it developed the elasticity that I was looking for. It also blended so well with the filling that sugar in the dough did not really make the whole bread with the chocolate filling overpoweringly sweet.
This is how the second batch turned out. That syrup really did help create a gloss over on the chocolate babka. One of the things that I definitely notice with this particular batch is that this one it actually sank. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but it did have a little bit of sinking that happened over there. I don't know if it's because of the chocolate that I've used, but it did break a little as well. One of the things that I would highly recommend regarding this particular method or recipe, make sure that the rack is in the center, not so close to the upper parts of the oven. Clearly this one came off because it did touch the upper part of the oven or the ceiling of the oven, and so it just unfortunately came off. But overall, this really turned out well. I can't wait to cut into this and show you how this batch turned out. This one did the first rice in the fridge for about 12 hours or so, and baked at 350 for 40 minutes, or I should say about 38 minutes. This one I did underbake a little bit for under 2 minutes, and yeah, I can't wait to show you. So I want to show both breads for comparison. This one was the one that I baked last night with the first batch of dough. It did turn out I was very happy with how this one turned out. The dough is actually very soft, as I was expecting really from Claire's recipe. The crust has an outside shell that's really nice. Like I can still bite into this and not feel like I'm gonna break a tooth or something. But yeah, the filling was very well distributed. I was very anxious on how the swirls would come out. I was kind of afraid that it wouldn't, or it would overproof, but overall, this is still pretty good. This one I did after shaping and putting it on the loaf to rise for the recommended 1.5 hours to 2 hours. I actually just did this for 30 minutes. With just how the temperature was at home last night, I felt confident enough to put it in the oven and let it bake for the whole 40 minutes. This one is the second batch right here. And as you can see, the swirls are definitely beautiful. Yep, the dough is soft. Just overall, like I can see like a little bit of the gloss from the syrup. This one, I did a second rise of 2 hours because I just wanted to see like how that would turn out. But overall, I think it really helped develop a lot of just this beautiful bread right here. As you can see, like it's very soft. I don't want to poke into it just because I don't want to get too much chocolate on my hands. So I was kind of worried with the overall integrity of that one loaf that had a very deep sinking hole, I should say, in the middle. But overall, I believe it turned out great. These are some of these are discards, but this is one of the casualties. As you can see, let me take this out. Would probably attribute this to, the dough turned out great. I think I would attribute this to this chocolate that I used. This one, I used a different brand, and it also may not be a baking type of dark chocolate. It weighed down the dough a lot, as you can see. Unlike the other one that had beautiful swirls or just the ratio of bread to filling, you can see some of the layers or just where the filling was rolled. Filling bread, and this one particularly does not deter me. I would say babka, it's bread that you pull apart, and so it's just one of those things that doesn't
necessarily bother me when it comes to some of it falling off. For me, it's more of, this is the one that I'm taking this as a kitchen L. Moving forward, I will be using a baking type kind of dark chocolate. Overall, I am very happy. Like I said, I'm very happy with the recipe. Claire's enriched dough recipe really does work great for even just plain or breads with fillings. This worked out very well. The ratio of the sweetness of the bread itself, the overall richness of the dough works out so well with this particular kind of recipe.
So that's going to do it for today, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. Overall, I was very happy with the results of this chocolate babka. It was my first time making it, and I am definitely sticking with Claire's enriched dough recipe. If you have tried Claire's recipe using a different kind of filling, or just if you've had it plain but you used a different kind of method or modified a little bit of her recipe, please let me know and share. I would love to learn more about it. If you have any recommendations for me, definitely let me know. And like I said, if you found this video useful, please like, share, and subscribe. Again, I'll see you next time.